There he is, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City as he joins us on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. And if you're watching the live video, I'm imagining, Mike, you were heading to Linwood.
I am. I'm headed to Linwood, Mainland, and Cherokee in a Diamond Classic quarterfinal. Chase Petty supposed to be on the mound for the Mainland Mustangs today. So if you are in the area and you want to see a potential first-round draft pick pitch, he will be throwing today at 4 p.m. against Cherokee.
Yeah, this is a rematch from their Coaches versus Cancer. They played in that first Friday night game, did they not?
Right, and a game that I believe Mainland, Petty did not pitch that game. Mainland rallied. I think they won 6-5. I think they Joe Sheeran with a big hit, as I recall. Mainland rallied to get, so it is a rematch. And Cherokee, a very good baseball program, traditional Group 4 power against Mainland, Group 3 team. That's the kind of matchups you get in the Diamond Classic, teams that don't ordinarily play or face each other. So it should be a good one in Linwood today.
At AC Press McGarry, if you can't make the game and you want some updates, he'll be tweeting those out. And, of course, coverage in tomorrow's Press of Atlantic City. All right, Mike, couple things I want to go back and forth with you on. One, the Eagles signed Ryan Kerrigan today. Now, he has terrorized the NFC East. 13.5 sacks against the Eagles, 13.5 sacks against Dallas, and 13 against the Giants. Does this move the needle for you at all?
Not really. Better, does it make them better? Yes. But quite frankly, I've been sort of stunned by people's optimism about the Eagles after the schedule came out. People playing the scheduled game. Yeah, I read somewhere where the Eagles can get double-digit wins. When I look at that schedule, I honestly have a hard time getting them to 4 or 5 wins, basically. So, okay, this guy they add is good. He plays well in the division. All that's great. But he's a defensive lineman. I mean, okay, maybe he's worth one more win. But, I don't understand the overall optimism that I'm seeing from a lot of Eagles fans and some Eagles media after that schedule came out.
Well, it's almost one of those things, too, is like, does this signing what kind of message does it send? Because a lot of people thought this team was kind of rebuilding. Then they go out and get a couple veteran players, Anthony Harris, Eric Wilson, and now you're going to get Kerrigan. Like, what's the message of bringing in a guy like this? Is this saying, no, we think we're in this thing. We think we can win this division?
Well, the message might be we're trying to rebuild, but we're going to try to win at the same time. I've watched the Giants and the Washington football team try to do that the past 5 years, and it really hasn't worked for either one of those teams. So I think you have to be all in one way or the other. And I think the Eagles right now are kind of, trying to have their cake and eat it too, saying we're going to rebuild, but yet we're going to be competitive. And I don't know if that really works in the NFL.
It's funny because a lot of people are comparing this signing to the Chris Long deal. 32 years old, rotational pass rusher. In fact, Torrey Smith put the meme out of the two Spider-Men pointing at each other, like Chris Long, Ryan Kerrigan. So I don't know. People are looking at this as, hey, remember in 2017 they had all those under-the-radar, LeGarrette Blount, Chris Long, Patrick Robinson, and those guys all had a big factor. I don't think this team's winning a Super Bowl, but I definitely think they can compete in this division, Mike.
I don't know. Like I said, I looked at the schedule when it came out. I played the schedule game. I'm not a schedule snob. I think the schedule game is fun. Win here, loss here. And I had a tough time getting them to 4 or 5 wins, and this signing isn't putting them over the top. And, you look back at that 2017, I mean, okay, Fletcher Cox is 3-4 years older. The overall talent that team had is not what this team has, basically. So, I think Eagles fans are kind of kidding themselves if they think 2021 is going to be a repeat of 2017, basically. I think you're more likely for 2021 to be a repeat of 2020.
All right, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Let's go to the Sixers, who we now know captured that 1 seed. The last time we talked, they had lost to the Heat on Thursday night, and people were a little uneasy about this, but they played good Friday, took care of Orlando, and then won again last night. But they also got some interesting news along the way, is that they're not going to face Miami, Milwaukee, or Brooklyn en route to an Eastern Conference final. So is this the best path they could have hoped for?
Yeah, obviously, it's a great path for them. And one thing I don't understand or I don't get, I kind of tweeted this out last night and listening to Doc Rivers on Friday night and listening again to some people around the Sixers talk, some media talk. I don't understand this narrative that the Sixers are some sort of young basketball team, going to look to mature in the playoffs. Joel Embiid is 27. Okay, Simmons is 24. Tobias Harris has been in the league 11 years. Danny Green's 33. Seth Curry's 30. George Hill's a veteran. Dwight Howard's 35. This is a team on its fourth straight playoff appearance. 2 years ago, they were in Game 7 against the team that went on to win the NBA championship. This is a team that's built to win right now. I don't buy this narrative coming from Doc Rivers and the Sixers that we've got to get the number one seed because we're so young. They're not young. It's time to win. And if they don't win, I still think the Brooklyn Nets are going to win the East. But I think there's a very real case to be made here. If the Sixers don't get to the NBA final as the number one seed, the season has been a disappointment. There's no two ways about it.
That's an interesting one. I agree with you that this isn't a young roster anymore. This is a prime roster. The only young guy in terms of age is Simmons, but he's been in the league long enough now. So I agree with you there. But I would say and challenge you on this. When this season began, people thought this was a 6 seed.
Not me. I mean, I think in Embiid, you've got one of the best players in the NBA in his prime now.
We found that out after the fact. He has been a much better Embiid this year. And look, he was a great player before. He's turned into an elite player now.
Well, and you've got better shooters around him. It's supposed to emphasize what is good for Embiid and Simmons. You've got Daryl Morey taking over the team. You've got a new coach in Glenn Doc Rivers. To me, this is a team built to win right now.
Yeah.
And win right now. Of course, of Embiid, he's 27. We don't know how much, is he. I don't think Embiid's going to be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar running up and down the court when he's 37, 38 years old. So Embiid is in his prime. You have the number one seed. You have a tailor-made road to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Agreed.
Okay, Brooklyn, Miami, Milwaukee on the other side. If the Sixers don't get it done this year, it's a disappointment. And I think they're trying to manage some expectations now with this. We're young. You're not young. It's time to win, and it's time to win right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I feel like you have Joel Embiid playing at an MVP level. And when you have that type of player, these are your chances. They have to go and get this. Now, 7 years ago, when they embarked on this, they did this to get a player like Joel Embiid, and they got him. So I agree with you. They're the 1 seed. I would say if they make the Eastern Conference Finals and lose to Brooklyn, I don't know that there's shame in that, right?
Well, I think it depends on how they lose to Brooklyn. If they get to the East Finals and Brooklyn or Milwaukee's there, I think it's going to be Brooklyn, and they lose in 5 games or they lose in 4 games, then I think it's a disappointment. If they lose a classic 7-game series and Durant hits, a game-winning shot in Game 7, he's this Kawhi Leonard. The ball hits the rim 5 times this year instead of 4 back in 2017. Then I think you can walk away and say, okay, we just got beat. But I think it matters how you play in that Eastern Conference Final.
Fair.
And if you were before that, then you have to rethink things.
All right, that's fair. I mean, yeah, if you get swept out and you just look like you're miles away from the 2 seed, right, then I would agree. But I think for the most part, for them to get the number 1 seed was a surprise for most people coming off of. I mean, last year, Mike, it looked clearly like the arrow was plummeting down, and this thing was a disaster. They were the butt of a lot of jokes that you did this whole process and you're getting knocked out. You're swept in the first round. They looked like they had that Horford contract around their neck for years, and that this was going to be. But now you looked at it, we talked about the other day, Boston's the one that's going down, and Philly's at the top of the conference. So how long can they sustain this with this, as you're saying, age of this roster? Danny Green's probably not going to be here. How long is Curry going to be here? So I think, and Dwight Howard, people forget, he's 35. I think this team has a shot right now that you're right. They got to go. I hate to say this with you, but you're right. They got to grab this opportunity because there's no clear-cut favorite.
I would agree, and I just think the other key thing is Embiid's age. He's 27 years old. He had the best season of his career. give the Sixers credit. You're right. They were headed in the wrong direction after the bubble last year, but they went out and made changes. They brought in Doc Rivers, who I think we can say now is an upgrade over Brett Brown as coach. They went and got Daryl Morey. You're right. We thought the Horford contract, they'll never get rid of that contract. Morey comes in. 2 weeks later, he makes a trade. Horford and Richardson are out. Curry and Green are in. Better fit for the team. They made the changes. They're the number 1 seed. It's time to win now. This is not, this is a win now team. This is not a team, and I'm not saying life falls apart if this is their only window, but they are not on the innocent climb here. They have a legitimate chance to get to the NBA final, and they've got to seize it. And I don't buy the narrative that Doc Rivers is selling, that they're just some sort of young team stumbling into the playoffs lucky to be there.
It's weird because, when they first made the playoffs a couple of years ago, it felt that people thought that team was ready. That was a young team and probably exceeded expectations. But it's weird because they never really got out of that second round. And then last year, they lose the way they do. It just felt like, man, this thing is falling apart. It's kind of going away. And then you're here. So it is a kind of a weird I guess they took a weird direction to get to the number 1 seed.
Right. Well, it's almost 2 steps up and a big giant step back before they step forward again here. But I would agree with you. 4 years ago when they made the playoffs, they entered on that big winning streak. They beat, Miami in the first round, and then they go out and lose to the Celtics. That's the sort of innocent climb. The next year, they're right there with Toronto. They beat the Nets. They go 7 games with Toronto. Toronto wins the NBA championship. We would have thought they would have taken a step last year. COVID hits. Who knows? No Ben Simmons in the playoffs. They change over this year. They're the number 1 seed. I mean, again, I just think they're built to win this year. And if they don't win, it's a disappointment.
All right, Mike McGarry covers it all for the Press of Atlantic City. Check out his must-win column, and he joins us here on the Sports Bash. All right, the Knicks and the Hawks. So on Friday, we didn't know if we were going to get that series. In fact, I think you said that the Heat would get that seed. The Knicks end up winning both those games. So give them credit. They got the 4 seed. So they're going to host the Hawks in round 1. How do you see that one?
I see it as a long series, and my heart says Knicks. My head, however, says Atlanta has more talent. So I see it as a 6 or 7 game series. My heart, again, says Knicks, Julius Randle, Thibodeau, everything else, Derrick Rose. But my head says Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks just have a more talented roster than the New York Knicks at this point.
What a story, both those teams. I mean, the Hawks fire their coach in the middle of the season and end up getting a 5 seed after not – I can't remember. The last time the Hawks made the play was what, Al Horford?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, didn't they have that 50-win team that had kind of played well? I think the guy who coaches Milwaukee now was kind of coaching them back then. But I just think there was a game played a couple of weeks ago between the Knicks and the Hawks. The Knicks won in overtime, but the Hawks were pretty much handling the Knicks until Trae Young left with an ankle injury in the third quarter. I think if Trae Young is healthy, I think Trae Young and Capella, especially some size in front, I think the Hawks are tough. So, again, my heart says Knicks, my head says Hawks.
All right, and then we got Heat. Bucks have to match up in the first round. So one of these 2 teams is going to be gone.
Yeah, I think there's temptation there because I believe the Heat beat the Bucks last year, but I think the Bucks win this series. I like the addition of Drew Holiday. I think he brings a toughness to Milwaukee that they didn't have last year. So I actually think Milwaukee wins this series.
All right, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. We'll leave and get your thoughts on what happened in Dunedin this weekend. Joe Girardi, Gene Segura, the Phillies can't make Little League plays. I mean, this thing, the optics, he's fighting Jimmy Salisbury. What's going on?
It was not a good weekend for the Philadelphia Phillies, basically. However, I do think it's worth to take a step back and say, hey, they're only a half game back of the New York Mets, who had a very similar weekend as to the Phillies. They were also in Florida. They got swept by the Tampa Bay Rays. They're going to see Jeff McNeil and Michael Conforto probably on the disabled list with hamstring injuries. They were down to 1 bench player yesterday. The thing about the Phillies, I think, though, that the first 41 games of the season have highlighted, and I still think they're going to be a team that wins between 80 and 84 games and is in contention for that wild card spot. But they just have some problems on the roster, right? They're a poor defensive team.
Very.
The backup of their starting rotation is not good. and they're kind of top heavy with a roster. They lack organizational depth, and I don't know if those problems can be fixed this season. And they were all highlighted this weekend.
At AC Press McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, Mike McGarry. Don't forget, he'll be over at the mainland game today, Chase Petty in the Diamond Classic. So if you want updates on that, follow him at AC Press McGarry on Twitter. All right, Mike, we'll talk to you later.
All right, we'll see you down the road, Mike. Thanks.
He's, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Great job, as always. His column, Must Win, in the Press of Atlantic City. Check him out, Mike McGarry.